If you have anything to do with show business, and many of you in this room do, you know a lot about tax times. And you know that even though for most people tax time is in April, for theater people, tax time can be pretty liquid. October 15th was the last day in 2017 that you could deal with your taxes if you had applied for an extension. And boy, a lot of people know a lot about that. As I think about the Internal Revenue Service, I noticed that in this time in which we are living, when we are dealing with so many sharks in the ocean, and people are being called to stay away from the ocean because there have been so many sharks, no Internal Revenue Service agent has ever been bitten. Do you know why? Professional courtesy. From ancient times, I love that joke. From ancient times, taxes have been a part of life. We meet Jesus in utero when the evangelist Luke tells us that the Roman Emperor Caesar has decreed that all the world would be registered and all the world would be taxed. Mary, heavy with child, was journeying with her husband Joseph to Bethlehem to have this blessed baby, as the prophets foretold, in the city of David, but also to be taxed. With regard to Roman taxes in Israel and Judah, the idea of being conquered by another empire was bad enough. And then the fact that the Hebrews had to pay taxes to their conquerors was worse still. But the fact that the tax had to be paid in the coin of the Roman Empire, that for Hebrews was unbearable. And here's why. Because Roman money had the head, the imprint, the image of Caesar on the coin. And Caesar thought himself to be a god. That meant that for Hebrews who worship Yahweh, the very handling of Roman money was blasphemous and disrespectful of the one true God. Jews had to touch, be paid in, provide for their families with, and pay their taxes using a currency that was ritually unclean. A currency that disrespected their most cherished sacred belief and beliefs. That would be like the only money that you and I had to sustain our families would be money obtained from the sale of our children in human trafficking. So long before this set of Pharisaic assistants and Herodians came to question Jesus, there was an ongoing, deep-seated tension among the tiny Hebrew nations of Israel and Judah about having to handle this despised currency. So these questioners came to Jesus, and they began by flattering Jesus or passive-aggressively insulting Jesus. Ironically, the flattery they used was absolutely true. Jesus was sincere. Jesus did teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. Jesus did show deference to no one. Jesus indeed regarded no one with partiality. It was all true, everything they said. The honey on their tongues fairly dripped as they moved to ask Jesus the very dangerous and loaded question. So, teacher, is it right to pay taxes to the emperor? Jesus responded to these underlings, as Terry read in our hearing, "Why do you continue to persecute me?" Jesus knew that if he said, yes, it is right to pay taxes to Caesar, he would alienate the Hebrews and his own sacred tradition. And if he said, no, it is wrong to pay taxes to the emperor, he would alienate the Romans and possibly be arrested for rabble-rousing, heresy, and even treason. So once again, the establishment thought they had Jesus right where they wanted him. But you know the story. Jesus said, bring me the coin. Jesus looked at it and said, whose head is on the coin? Whose inscription? And after a lifetime of living under Roman oppression, of course Jesus was well aware of the answer. But a good attorney never asks questions without already knowing the response. The lackeys stood right up and responded, "Caesar!" And without missing a beat, Jesus said, "Then pay Caesar what is due Caesar. But pay God what is due God." The order in which Jesus constructed his answer made it abundantly clear which was most important. First, people have to live in society. People have to get along. Some of you have had a history of working 2 or 3 jobs to make ends meet. Anybody ever have to do that? Both my hands are up. And when you began bringing in more money, many of you have never forgotten to increase your church giving thanks for the one who made it possible for you to work to make ends meet. In a very literal way, you are paying Caesar what is due Caesar, but you are also giving to God what is due God. But paying Caesar and rendering unto God are not always measured in the same currency, are they? In his book, The Theology of Hope, theologian Jürgen Moltmann describes 3 roles that the modern church has carved out for itself. First of all, Moltmann says our faith is first of all personal because it provides individual and private humanity for each of us. Each one of us is a child of God, just as valuable as any other child, thank God. If society is inhumane and oppressive, personal faith is found in the realm of personal and free decisions arrived at between you and God. No matter what the world says, faith is a personal sanctuary of unburdening and spiritual readjustment. It is like what Jan was saying when she described prayer life. Taking that time to go into your personal prayer space and pray, there is no law that can govern that. Secondly, Moltmann says our faith is communal in that it provides an interaction lacking in society. When you come into a faith community looking for fellowship, faith communities are glad to receive you. In fact, some preachers have been known to jump out of bushes trying to receive people. You have a bond, you have friendships just because you showed up. When we get together from all walks of life to pray, to worship, and to be in community, we are rehearsing and reenacting God's welcome. The heavenly banquet table, the table to which this table points, the table to which this table is connected, where after all that has happened, all that we experience, all will be welcome. We get to be the prolepsis, the foretaste as God's community right now. And lastly, Moltmann says that in times of rapid change and confusion, like the world in which we live today, the church is institutional. Questions of fear and uncertainty should hold no terror for God's people. Over my lifetime, I've noticed that whenever there is a calamity, there are always extra people in church, thank God, looking for answers. Moltmann says that is because God's people live their lives believing that the authority of the church can answer any question. But Moltmann argues that by taking on only these 3 roles, the pastoral church has accommodated itself to social reality. In other words, the church has very little to say to society except what society wants to hear. The church, Moltmann says, has lost its prophetic voice. If we give to Caesar what is Caesar's, but are careful to give to God what belongs to God, we understand that it is not enough to care for people so that they can cope with the pressures of life, or to even feed people. Someone said complete trust in God's promises creates a restless, forward-looking people that see every area of life in terms of Christ's rule, every area of life in terms of Christ's rule. These people may often seem a little odd. These people may sometimes be a little intense. But at the end of the day, they are unstoppable because they bear God's imprint. Years ago, I spent time counseling a mom who could not see the divine imprint on her children's faces, and all children look like God, all of them. No matter right or wrong, she thought it was always better to take their abusive father's side against her own children. Realizing her mistake to this day, her heart is broken. On the other hand, there's this other mother. Nancy Matthews Elliott Addison was a sensitive, shy woman who lived in the middle of the 19th century. She knew what it was like to pay Caesar's due, because at a time before women could vote, she managed to receive a formal education and support herself as a teacher. The daughter of a minister and a devout Presbyterian herself. Nancy Matthews Addison had also experienced rendering unto God what belonged to God. Her husband, a fighter for freedom of the common man, moved his family from Canada to Milan, Ohio, a place that I know. And she changed their last name from Addison to Edison. That is where Mary bore the last of her 3 children. One day, her youngest son, Tom, came home from school with a note from his teacher. He said, "The teacher said you have to read this to me, Mom. What does it say?" Nancy opened the note, and tears began to fill her eyes. "What does it say, Mom?" She read, "Your son, Thomas Alva, is a genius. We don't have the facility to teach him at this school. You must keep him at home, and you must teach him." And teach him, Nancy Edison did. Thomas Alva Edison grew up to be one of the most successful inventors in this still young country. This country that was built on innovation. Thomas Edison said, "It was my mother that made me who I am. She gave me something to live and to love for. I must never disappoint her." So after his mother passed away, Thomas was going through her things, and he found that old, wrinkled, folded note that the teacher had sent home to his mother. The note that he was not to read. He opened the note, and the note said, "Mrs. Edison, your son is an imbecile. Please keep him at home. The school cannot educate him." In spite of what the school said, what the authorities said, this 19th century Presbyterian daughter, who struggled with her own mental health, so that she possibly recognized her son's eccentricities, when she read that someone had called her son an imbecile, she looked through that crumpled piece of paper and saw God's imprint on her son. And seeing that, she could look past how he might have acted, or the fact that he also had a hearing challenge, or how others thought about him. In her son, she saw the imprint of God. And the light in her eyes enabled the son to see the imprint of God on his mother. Working together, they rendered unto God what was due God. Will you pray? God, help us use our money that is imprinted with the symbols of our country to satisfy our obligations and live comfortable and prosperous lives. God, help us use our money that is imprinted with the symbols of our country to help the poor and help the downtrodden and help those who are less fortunate. Find some comfort and safety in this life. God, let us use our lives, which are imprinted with your likeness, to serve all with whom we come in contact. And with our very being, allow us to announce and proclaim the glory of the one we seek to resemble, and that would be you. In your Son's name.